Welcome to the CCR ETA 2110 Recipients On-Demand Evaluation Resource Series, a joint effort of the Washington State Evaluation Partnership, or WSEP, and Arizona State University, ASU. We run national evaluation centers for the CDC Community Health Workers for COVID-19 Response in Resilient Communities, CCR. And we bring this offering to you today in the spirit of collective learning, understanding, and exploration. This video will introduce you to the Equitable and Participatory Evaluation Framework that was developed for the Community Health Workers for COVID-19 Response and Resilient Communities Evaluation Community of Practice. After interacting with this video, what it is that we want you to know, feel, or be able to do is understand the major ideas or components being shared in the Equitable and Participatory Evaluation graphic. Understand how and why the graphic was created and what it adds to the existing landscape of evaluation. And feel encouraged and motivated to apply the lessons of the Equitable and Participatory Evaluation graphic to your work in communities. Before we jump in, I'd like to invite you to think about the question: what comes to mind when you think of the word evaluation? Pause the video here for a few seconds and jot down a few things that come to mind. Great. Next, I'd like to invite you to think about one more question. What comes to mind when you hear equitable participatory evaluation? Again, I invite you to pause the video here and write down some of your thoughts. Notice what is or is not different from your answer to the first question. Okay, thank you for getting your brain warmed up with me. Now we're going to be introduced to the Equitable and Participatory Evaluation Framework by one of the co-creators, Leah.
My name is Leah, and I'm excited to present the Equitable Participatory Evaluation Framework that was developed for the Community Health Workers for COVID-19 Response and Resilient Communities Evaluation Community of Practice. I'm going to give an overview of the graphic now, and later you will learn more about how our graphic was collaboratively developed. So as you can see in the graphic, we included set out steps for evaluation, like developing your team and identifying your approach. And we also included 4 guiding values, which are seen in the rays of the sun. The values are centering community voice, so ensuring that community is represented and centered in the evaluation, not just the voice of the evaluator. Inquiry is application-minded, so thinking about the possible results of the evaluation from the beginning and also making sure the possible results are useful for the community. Another ray is data is relevant for your community, so data is meaningful for and understood by your community and can be used both now and in the future. And the final value is findings address underlying causes. For example, exploring the different social determinants of health that have an impact on health and social outcomes throughout your evaluation. Our approach to evaluation also acknowledges the iterative nature of evaluation. Sometimes you may need to take a step back before you can move forward. For example, with staffing transitions and turnover, you may need to redevelop your team. And finally, our approach to evaluation and the way we conduct it is determined by our beliefs about truth and knowledge and values. Every culture and society makes assumptions about truth, knowledge, and values, whether those are explicit or implicit. And in evaluation, this impacts how you design and complete your evaluation and how success is measured. Through colonialism and imperialism, ways of knowing of some communities have been systematically devalued, while the ways of knowing of white male European culture has been set above others and has become synonymous with science. And they've been given the ability to define what knowledge is. Part of a participatory approach is encouraging communities to produce knowledge through their own systems and ways of knowing. For example, I've spent a good portion of my career working in American Indian and Alaska Native health, and there's a movement in the Native evaluation community to reclaim traditional ways of knowing and sharing through things like storytelling and art, which are really traditional ways of data collection. And some evaluation models think that participatory evaluation introduces bias. Direct experience with what is being evaluated can be a huge asset as long as we're able to examine our own feelings, reactions, and motives and be open about our position. And finally, I'd also like to acknowledge that the creators of this graphic do not condone the promotion of so-called alternative truths that perpetuate the oppression of people of color, members of the LGBTQ+ community, people in poverty, and other marginalized groups. Promoting these alternative truths keeps power in the hands of oppressors.
Now that we've gotten that introduction from Leah about the framework, we're going to observe a conversation between Leah and two of the other co-creators, Penny and Victoria, showing us the origins of the graphic. The setting is a Zoom call between the three of them. In this scene, they are meeting to create the framework for an upcoming community of practice session with evaluators and community health workers. Let's watch.
Hey, Penny, how are you?
Good. How are you, Leah?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to create this new evaluation framework for the community of practice. I'm just looking forward to making something that will be valuable to all the participants.
Right. Same. Hey. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, everyone. I am so sorry that I am late. My last Zoom call just went a little bit long.
No worries, Victoria. We've all been there. We're just glad that you're here and we're able to join us. Penny and I were just talking about how we might go about creating the evaluation framework for the upcoming community of practice sessions.
Right. So I think I'm wondering if we might want to just start with the objectives first and then go from there. Like, what do we want this framework to accomplish for our participants?
Well, I'm thinking that historically, evaluation has at times treated communities like specimens to be experimented on. I think we're trying to create a framework for them that really centers the voice and experience of communities at every stage of the evaluation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even as you all are talking, I'm wondering if I might try to design a little something off the side, if that's okay. I'd love to put something down as we're still figuring out the concept.
Absolutely. Please do. So, you know what, when Leah was talking, I was thinking, the participants of this community of practice are going to be evaluators and community health workers. And as a community health worker myself, I think we need something that really resonates and feels useful to the experiences of both groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I am right there with you, Penny. As a fellow CHW, that makes a ton of sense to me. And Leah, didn't you mention a resource that integrates decolonizing data and centering communities as explicit evaluation aims?
Yeah, I did. It's the Urban Indian Health Institute's Indigenous Evaluation Framework. My background is as an evaluator for American Indian and Alaska Native health programs. And I really appreciate the way this framework asserts that the reason we do evaluation is to benefit the communities served. So evaluation must be culturally responsive and put communities in control of the information that's being collected, analyzed, and interpreted.
Wow, that is super powerful. So, it means that community knowledge is as valid and as valuable as knowledge that's collected elsewhere. In fact, even more so. And data should really mean something to the communities, and the evaluation should intentionally focus on root causes to systemic issues.
Wow, Penny, I mean, those sound like guiding principles to me. And I'm wondering if another might be a focus on the outcome in the evaluation process, that evaluators should be mindful of how their work is going to be used to redress the disparities they uncover.
Right, you know what? I think we're on a roll. So for the evaluation steps, I'm wondering if you've seen the article by our colleague Noelle Wiggins and others. It was written in 2017 called Participatory Evaluation as a Process of Empowerment, Experiences with Community Health Workers in the US and Latin America.
Yeah,
Have you seen that?
I did see that one. Yeah. And I believe they also referenced the 4th edition of the Community-Based Participatory Research for Health book by Meredith Minkler and Nina Wallerstein. It has great foundational steps that I think we should incorporate. And I'm also wondering if there's a way to depict in the graphic that the process is, iterative. For example, teams may not just go through each step in order once. They might go back and forth between steps, and they might refine, and they might have to go back to the beginning and again throughout the evaluation process.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. And I think I have some ideas about how we might be able to depict that visually. And I'm also thinking back to the Urban Indian Health Institute's Indigenous Evaluation Framework. And I love how they really include values at the center. So I'm curious for us, what kinds of values do you all think might be important to center in our graphic?
I think that the data that's collected in the evaluation is relevant for the community.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, absolutely. And I'm thinking a lot about sort of that commitment to community that you're just describing. Absolutely.
Right. And equity, of course. Right. Yeah. And I think those are all great. But I also like, maybe we just keep values in the center, and then each evaluation team can determine which values are most important to them.
That's a really great point, Penny. Critical to our values, can we also incorporate the idea of multiple ways of knowing? I think it relates well to our conversation about decolonizing data. And so often information from certain sources has been undervalued. And this doesn't mean we slip into the world of misinformation where anything is true, but that our empirical evidence approaches are culturally and community informed.
That is such an important distinction, Leah. Let's make sure to include that. And now you all don't laugh at me, but I'm almost imagining this framework or this graphic as like the sun, as in equitable and participatory practices are the guiding light of our evaluation solar system. And I'm also thinking about 4 winds or directions as being really sacred in many Indigenous traditions. So maybe there's a way to honor that and make those our guiding principles, right? As the 4 points of the sun.
So I really love that, Victoria. I think I need to see it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. How about I work on a draft and then we can all regroup next week and make changes? Does this same day and time work for you all?
Yeah, absolutely.
That works for me too. Great. I'll see you all next week.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much. Talk soon.
Bye.
Now that we've heard more from Leah, Penny, and Victoria about the framework, I'd like to invite you to do some reflection and application of what you've heard today. First, a reflection question. Think back to our earlier question about your thoughts on evaluation and equitable participatory evaluation. After learning more about this graphic, how have your initial thoughts changed? You can pause here for a few seconds while you reflect on this question. Next, a couple application questions. How might you apply what you learned today with your team? What are 1 to 3 action steps you can take in the next month with your team to practice equitable and participatory evaluation? Again, I invite you to pause the video here while you think about your answer. We hope that this video gave you some inspiration and ideas for how you might embed equity and participation into your evaluation processes. Remember, this framework is guided by the values that community voice is centered, inquiry is application-minded, data is relevant for your community, and findings address underlying causes. If you are a 2109 grantee who is interested in applying this framework to your program, please reach out to your 2110 evaluation TA provider via AMP. We'd like to give a huge thank you to the co-creators of the graphic, Victoria Adewumi, Leah Baker, Penny Jewell, and Noelle Wiggins. We'd also like to acknowledge the 3 primary sources from which this graphic draws inspiration: the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Framework for Program Evaluation in Public Health, the Urban Indian Health Institute Indigenous Evaluation Framework, and Wiggins et al.'s 2017 article, Participatory Evaluation as a Process of Empowerment, Experiences with Community Health Workers in the U.S. and Latin America. We'd also like to thank the partnership between the CDC, WSEP, and ASU for this collaboration. And finally, and most importantly, we'd like to thank you, 2109 grantee sites and community health workers, for taking the time to learn about and reflect on this important topic and working to transform our ways of working toward equity. Thank you.